First, to begin with a question for Admiral Hilarides about the TDY policy. This is something that this committee has also discussed as well very recently with Admiral Howard, who came before our committee, and she had testified that there should be a concern that we ensure that there is no negative impact on the naval shipyard's ability to effectively and efficiently conduct Navy ship maintenance. And to me, this is something that I talked to her about your prior comments in the January letter, and she expressed concern as well that this policy could end up costing us more. My concern, having heard from obviously my constituents who work at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, who are deployed to help other shipyards all the time and obviously help the Navy, they want to do this. But right now, the new TDY policy is negatively impacting their ability to do that. And we can't ask them to go off to other shipyards and leave their family and actually be in situations where it may cost them more to do that based on staying stateside, or put them in living conditions that don't allow them to focus on their job. So I wanted to ask you, just very specifically, based on what you've said in the past, I know you've already said that it's had a negative impact on the naval shipyard's ability to effectively and efficiently conduct Navy maintenance, and does have the potential to increase the end cost. I know that wasn't the goal in putting the policy in place, but we have to look at the actual impact of a policy, and I think that's really, really important. So I wanted to ask you today, how has the new long-term TDY policy negatively impacted the naval shipyard's ability to effectively conduct naval ship maintenance? And can you explain, I know why the policy was intended to save money, but what are these unintended consequences that have flowed from it that I think all of us think it's important to address?
Yes, ma'am. I'll attempt to characterize it I'll try to be concise, but it does require some detail. I do stand by the letter that I wrote, and it deals specifically with the trade laborers. And these are shipyard workers who, spend 10, sometimes 12 hours a day hauling a welding machine, cable, pipe, the things, this is hard physical work. They are volunteers. So to go on TDY in accordance with their union contract requires them to volunteer, and they will volunteer if they're properly recompensed for their travel. The travel regulation, as I understand it, when it was put in place, said after a month you can negotiate a long-term arrangement with your housing, and you can lower your cost of food and other things by shopping smartly. And many people on travel can do that. They go to school for 6 months, they can find time to get to a store and stock a long-term lease with that kind of food. These folks, however, are working many times 12 hours a day, hard physical labor, and getting out to a store, finding food, coming back and cooking it. It just has not been something that fits in the kind of day that they have, and so they spend their money at the closest fast food store they can find, and you really can't survive on the money that's provided once it starts to get reduced on that. And so I wrote it specifically about those folks because we need them to volunteer to go do these jobs, many times of which is 3 months, 4 months, could even be more than 6 months. We want them to go as a team. They're most effective. And it's as much an effectiveness argument as anything. They're most effective when that team is integral and operates together as a team for their entire time. And so when that work team goes, you want them to volunteer, you want to properly support them, and you want them to get their work done efficiently and effectively. If after a month their allowance goes down and they go home and are replaced by someone else, you lose that effectiveness in the team, and then of course you have the travel costs. So I wrote my letter. It is in staffing. We have made the business case. That is being analyzed, as the Vice Chief indicated. I'll continue to fight to have them see that, yes, in fact, in this narrow case, it makes sense to create some sort of a standard variance from that rule, and we'll see how that goes over the next few months.
Well, I certainly appreciate that you've made that case, Admiral, and I think we're hopefully going to make our case as well, wanting to make sure that our shipyard workers can continue to help and deploy, to help with the naval maintenance that needs to be done. And I know today, in fact, every senator who's representing a public shipyard is supporting legislation that I've introduced that will ensure that we have a TDY policy that allows them to continue doing this. So we want to work with you on this. I want to thank all my colleagues, including the ranking member and, of course, Senator Shaheen and Senator Hirono, for their support on this issue, because this is a critical issue to us, and to make sure that we can continue to support our workforce as they deploy to other shipyards or other maintenance calls from the Navy. I also want to ask about the issue of best practices, because as we look at the number of new hires that have been made, I mean, it is a tremendous number of new hires, and having recently been at the graduation at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, this is quite a few people that they're integrating, and they have an excellent apprentice program. And also, as we think about how to improve all of our public shipyards, how are we going to make sure that we share best practices? Whether it's in the training space, also, Portsmouth has really done a lot of work on labor management, collaboration, empowering the workforce, and this, I think, is what has allowed Portsmouth, for example, to produce the submarines back into service, under budget and before time. So how are we in the Navy going to make sure that we do that, and we're all sharing each other's best practices, to not only on the training and the workforce issues, but also just the excellence and performance issues, so that we're all, we all benefit from hearing from each other.
Yes, ma'am. So that's really a headquarters responsibility to pull the 4 shipyards together. We have created, really with the help of the shipyards, and in many cases it was their idea, things we call communities of practice. And so you get the electrical shop of all 4 shipyards together in one location. You share the best training ideas, you share the best workforce development ideas. If there's a new maintenance practice that's been created, there's nothing like being shown it hands-on, as opposed to a written description or even a video. And so those community practices is our principal method of taking those best practices and sharing them across all the yards. Portsmouth is very much in the lead of this, but Pearl Harbor's rigging trainer sets the standard for the shipyards. And so actually some Portsmouth people saw that rigging trainer and said, boy, we need one of those at our shipyard. And so those communities practices are a predominant way to do that. On the labor management side, my predecessor created a thing called the NAVSEA Labor Management Council, and this is a council between NAVSEA, the National Metal Trades, the National IFPTE, and the other unions that are at the shipyards, above the bargaining unit. So it's a management labor discussion that's above bargaining, and it's about opening up this dialogue about how to make sure we have all the pathways to the sharing across the shipyards, to the very best communications between management and labor. And when there are shortfalls, they tend to go up to the Labor Management Council, and then I talk at the national level with folks like Ron Alt, and then we go work on it together from a national level to go try to help labor relations improve. And I think Portsmouth still is at the leading edge of that labor management relationship.
Well, I thank you for that, and also I think having seen how they together really from the grassroots perspective, develop their declaration of excellence and things, I hope that that's something that we can obviously share, and I appreciate your testimony. Thank you.